Mission a fucking accomplished. Goon Swarm is not a threat.
Good luck with your old dumb nullsec war snuffed out #1. Anunnaki Keepstar is next, and then come on.
There, and then you were just going to fucking magically jump into EVE Online in a system, and it was just going to load, and nobody was going to call you fucking stupid later?
There's an Eagle fleet that has dive-bombed a Megatron fleet. This is the bravest shit I have ever seen in my life.
The best possible shot to do something to the Imperium, and you fucked it up.
I talked a lot of shit over the last couple months. It's time to fucking eat some. And I showed up here to eat shit. Like,
the reason that this keeps started and get contested, and I cannot make this up, is because of tie-dye.
Guess where goons are going to live after this war is over?
Current plan is 319, I believe, right?
Delph.
Hi, sick.
I can tell you very clearly, our Diplos didn't even fucking care. So, like,
What?
White daddy.
Welcome to 2025.
Hell yeah.
Here we are. It's untethered again. It's going to be again and again forever, so you have to deal with that. But this is clearly the beginning of the year of all-out war for everybody in EVE Online, right? We're all excited for that. It's finally what some people have been waiting for about 5 years, or however long it's been since World War B2, right? Something meaningful. It's all kicking off. It's all kicking off. We've had a big one today. We've got several people with us today, some of whom have actually even logged into the game. It's incredible. Today we've got Carmelo here.
Hold on, wait a second.
Yeah, go on.
I think that everyone on this panel has logged into EVE Online in the last week. Is there any...
Okay, that's why I said today, but okay. I don't...
That?
Okay, has any of the five of us here today, have any of us not logged into EVE Online in the last 7 days?
I should be so lucky.
I'm very proud of you all. Extremely proud of you all.
We're all EVE Online players now.
We've got Carmelo, we got Luke, we got Redline, we got LB, and you've got me, Phantomite, as well. But one of us here, as well as logging in, has also been actually in space, pressing F1 and hopefully at least one other key at the same time today. So that's the fight of the day. Could be the fight of the week. Have there been any other fights between these previously blue groups? Well, I mean, to be fair, you know, these guys weren't friends before, but tell us about today. Tell us what's happened.
Yeah, so today, like, on the border of the nullsec space where Winterco lives, there is, you know, a Russian group there, like Darkside and Bring My Drake have lived in the kind of low-sec border around the Forge for a while, and we've been kind of fucking with them a little bit for a while, because they've been giving us some pretty good fights over the last couple of months or so. And they had like an industrial park in Myla, which it's a pretty storied system, actually, Myla. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened in that system over the last 5 or 6 years or so.
Lots of structure-based things have happened there, haven't they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was like a big Keepstar fight in there at some point or something. But anyway, we kind of went in there to mess with some of their stuff, to just try and get a fight. And they had like a Tatara and an Asbel in there. We went in there and we took some good fights over the Asbel they had, and had some pretty crazy fights in there over that, which was good fun for us. And kind of coming into the new year, Hanzo Viper, who is the guy who runs Siberian Squad, he was pretty interested in going to create a fight in there so we can get some content for his guys who are also like Russian time zone based, or close to Russian time zone based. So we went in there a few days ago and we reinforced the Tatara, which was in there. And we got a pretty good roll on the timer. So the timer came out at 17:22 today, which is kind of like in the middle of like Russian prime time zone, and like China time zone as well. It's like the end of the tail end.
It's very workable on a Sunday for Europeans as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like really the sweet spot for like a lot of people. Like, it's like 6 p.m. in Europe. It's just the morning for the US players. The Chinese players can stay up late, and it's kind of like pretty good for the Russian players as well. So we decided to go and take a fight in there. Ended up being pretty gnarly brawl. It's about 1,800 people, I think, in the end, or 1,800 people on the battle report. I think we were outnumbered by a good 400 or 500 subcaps at one point. A lot of them were in it who just brought like retributions, but 400 retributions still does a lot of damage still.
Yeah, that's
So
a
yeah, it's
powerful
pretty
force.
crazy.
I'm
down on the screen here too. It's you've got Frat, Sib Squad, Slice came along, like everyone was here, but no Horde.
everyone, and a fair few monitors as well. My favourite ship in the game. Tell you what, I have been repeatedly told over the last 6 months that the Paladin is no longer a good fleet ship for fleets of this size, of this caliber. But how do you feel they performed today? Because it certainly looked like they were doing their job.
I mean, their job was to shoot the Tatara and die, and I think they did that admirably.
Okay, fair enough. You're not replacing them, are you? You're not losing them on purpose, because it cost you, obviously, but still.
Yeah, so like Paladins were a doctrine that the Chinese portion of Fraternity have had for quite a while, and they kind of suck now. So they were retired, and we're not going to be using them anymore for the Chinese players. But obviously, a lot of people still had them, and we decided to utilize that as part of our strategy today to be able to have a long-range battleship doctrine that we could use to shoot the structure from like 250k away. So that was the reason why we brought a bunch of Paladins today. And you will note that it wasn't like a fleet of Paladins; it was a group of Paladins in a larger kind of battleship fleet.
I'm sorry, for a sort of lowly low-sec dweller like myself, it's very difficult for me to understand I have to scroll that far for fleets from nullsec when I'm looking at a battle report.
Yeah, so the reason we brought Paladins today was to be able to not have to fight at close range to the structure, right? So we brought a bunch of Paladins to allow us to sit 250k off the structure and kind of create a position that we can siege the structure around without having to be close to all of the structure newts and everything like that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of difficult to fight people who are like on tether 30k away from you, so kind of gives you more opportunities to do things and more kind of options. That was the primary reason we brought those today.
So what's the objective of today's fight?
A Tatara, he said.
Yeah, but did the Tatara die today?
No.
Was it final timer?
It was an armor timer, and to be more clear, like the objective today was to create a fight and have fun. Like the thing that we fought over was the Tatara, but we don't really care whether it dies or not. Like we just wanted to go and create a fight and have a good time.
Yeah. I mean, and that's how it goes. That's what you want to do, right? It's just that it's like the citadels and those kinds of things are just battlefields, And wherever the battlefield is doesn't matter. You just want to have the fight. But did you get the timer? Like, is it in Hull now? Or will it?
It is in Hull now.
There you go. So
and
you won. You won the objective.
And so when does this next objective occur? When's the timer for?
So the timer comes out on Wednesday, 1600, pretty much bang on 1600, which is it's like the maximum early roll of the timer that it could have got. Like the earliest it could go was like 1601, and it rolled for 1602. And 1600 is like midnight in China, so it's pretty doable for like our Chinese contingent of players to stay up and come and fight if they want to. So yeah, it's pretty good roll for us. I expect that we'll have another pretty gnarly roll over the final timer. Yeah, it looks good. It's going to be a good week, I think.
And I mean, there have been some other fights too. I don't have any off the top of my head, but I should have gotten some. So like, and this is all stemming from. I mean, it's not this specific fight isn't stemming from the reset, but the other ones have been from the big reset that happens, at the beginning of the year. We're 5 days in, and I think up north, you guys, we did what, like 800 people? Horde versus Fraternity or something like that, and Goons probably 200 harpies or something. Am I making
that was no, that was I know that I was in that fight. That was the fight we had in ATPX. Yeah, I think we took that fight with like, I don't know, 200, 250 guys from Fraternity and Winterco, and then like 400 Horde in system, and then Goons stand up with like another 150 people or something. Yeah, that's pretty crazy as well.
That sounds
very different. Two very different scales for the first two notable fights between previous friends, isn't it?
I mean, those aren't even the first two fights. There's been like a whole bunch of other fights. I think like within like an hour of the reset, there was like a Chinese fleet. I think there was 2 or 3 Chinese fleets that went to like the Horde staging and drones within like an hour of the reset. It's like 450 guys from the Chinese players. It's like 100 mil fight in MJ or something.
I'm gonna pin.
Well, that's very commendable.
I'm gonna pin this message. Reset summary: Goons and Init can't find each other's space, but somehow always find their way to Vale to fly together. Oh, that works so well for me. I love it.
Controversially, and I must admit, and I think Carmen saw some message from it. Like the first 24 hours, I was kind of quite frustrated with some of that situation, kind of going, "Well, this is a fake reset." To their credit, they have had some fights now, and they're definitely doing in it. Are definitely doing so.
Yeah.
Kudos to them at least that it's not quite as dry content down south as I was anticipating it would have been.
They're not sort of dancing around it.
It's always going to take some time to shake out, right? And I think everyone did expect that. But you've also got to remember that Winterco and PanFam, they have got a history of being neutral, fairly recently.
Right.
And on the opposing side of that, Init and Goons have not been neutral for, I believe, something like 10 years. 10 years is a long fucking time, so even if they are okay to go and shoot each other, I can totally understand that it might take them a bit of time to actually get comfortable going and doing it.
Right, because they've been friends, right? And that's the whole thing, is I didn't expect either side to just immediately be like, okay, we're gonna go reinforce our buddies' structures, because you were friends yesterday, you still be friends now, but I don't think that they should have to go and fight each other all the time. Because
I mean, they also live a third of the galaxy away from each other.
Yeah,
True.
There's that. There's patterns of life as well, right? Init has already established their own form of content. Okay, being blue to Imperium for 10 years, you have to form your own content, right? Do you just drop that, abandon that content to go shoot Dracarys and ZXB, or do you just keep doing what you're doing and let it happen naturally?
I mean, you should always do what you can to shoot Dracarys and ZXB. But,
I agree.
But other than that, yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I think that I was going to say, I think that where we've seen the strongest evidence of what I'm about to say is with Fraternity and PanFam, but it's clear that these groups are seeing an enthusiasm to have new enemies, and I think that that's always been something that I've experienced in EVE on smaller scales. Is when you move from one place to another, there is an excitement about there being new enemies who have new, less predictable styles, things to learn, new metas to figure out. It's the same when someone else moves to your area, right? There's that excitement of someone new, the unknown, not knowing everybody's Sino alts, that kind of thing. So I think it looks like it's scaling up. It scales up as well. People are excited to have someone fresh to fight, and maybe we need to hear from a number of people to see if this is a thing. But maybe it's nice to have somebody to fight who there isn't this kind of narrative of bitterness about as well.
Right. Yeah, no, and something that I've noticed is that if you look at how it was before, the two sides of the galaxy, one side is really interested in empire building and having the most this or that. The other side is really interested in just fighting. So as long as Init and Goons, they don't have to interrupt each other's empire building. But Frat and Horde, people in the north, they just want to fight and have fun. That's the game, man.
I suppose under ideal circumstances, an empire building mindset would push you to do a lot of fighting anyway.
Well, if someone comes to mess with your empire, sure, but otherwise you're just building your empire, you're crabbing away, fighting off whaling fleets, and I get that, but otherwise, what is there?
Well, it's pretty basic game theory, right? If it's easier to build than it is to destroy, then it's a race to the top, and if it's easier to destroy than it is to build, then it's a race to the bottom.
So you're saying that if going along with that train of thought, it's a very difficult thing to balance in the middle, so that there's some of both building and destroying.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at what happened during the Rorqual era, right? That was a race to the top because it was so easy to build, and during the Scarcity era, it was a race to not get to the bottom because it was so hard to rebuild. it's very difficult to have a equilibrium in the middle, which is like, you know.
Are you saying that sort of pre-scarcity it was tilted in the favor of building rather than destroying?
Very much so. It was very much like the metagame around large empires was based around empire building, and that's why you saw people build such big empires all the time.
Yeah, we had the delve time unit, right? Like there was only building. You couldn't destroy enough.
The fact that there is literal memes built around this concept should really explain to you that it is a real thing.
Yeah, I would love to have seen the dev's face when they comprehended the delve time unit, because I imagine it would have been a look of some manifestation of pure horror in that moment. At least I very much hope it was a manifestation of pure horror in that moment.
Given how long it took them to address the impact of the Rorqual, I would expect that their look on their face was pure bewilderment more than anything else.
For too long. I mean, you know, it's not the only thing that's gone on for too long in this game. I don't want to ding them on that
subject again today.
Unfortunately, every subject technically comes back to that, but moving away from it instead.
It doesn't have to. We could just let it. We could let it lie for a while. It's been a good long time, you know. But
well, look where we are now. This is the cusp of hopefully a golden age.
Hopefully. I mean, if more random fights are happening in space over nothing or over bullshit, then yeah, that's fantastic. Like, the more pings I get, the better, frankly.
I think it's too early to tell, really. I mean, we've seen kids smashing their toys into each other, but no one's really kicked over any sandcastles yet. Until we see that, I think this is just a change in colors on the SOV map, and that's pretty much it.
Well, I think that's a good. I think that that's a point I wanted to kind of talk about. You mean, you a lot of people, you know, regard me as a relatively pessimistic person regarding these kind of politics. Yeah, I can see you nodding, Redline.
They do?
Not relatively pessimistic around these kind of politics in EVE, but I gotta say, I genuinely am feeling those kind of sparks of actual. Maybe this is going to be good. Actually, honestly, in spite of my bias in that direction, this is going to be the test, though, isn't it? The real test is at the first sign of actual peril, will they just team up again? And that applies to any of these groups, not just one particular duo in particular.
Define actual peril. What do you mean? Like, define it for me.
An actual invasion of somebody's homelands, resulting in them being what you might call evicted.
So, like, someone trying to come in and bash their structures.
Someone blowing up your actual headquarters, the actual capital of your empire. I mean, that's the threat? I think that's quite a threat, to lose the capital of your empire as one of the four largest groups in the game.
For the head, right?
No, but if it started to get there, would people come together? Who knows? I genuinely feel like there's a fair chance.
I would certainly hope so.
They would.
At that point, I would certainly hope so. But
why? You don't think anybody should ever lose their capital?
No, I think that people should lose their capital. If, like, you can bring more people to actually destroy it, then by all means, go for it. But otherwise, then you should be fought off. And that's the whole point. I love those kinds of fights. Those are big ones.
Those are the ones that hopefully we get to do our first impromptu episode on.
I was concerned that maybe you were thinking that Peril would be like a random Fortizar in Lowsec belonging to Horde, that they would not bat phone Fraternity for that, maybe. Like, it
depends on the risk, doesn't it? I mean, I'm picking an ultimate Peril. You're picking a low end Peril, really, aren't you? As our examples, but they'll both be tests.
Yeah, no, I'm picking really like the first example of the test of your pessimistic mindset. Is that random for 𝗨𝗧𝗘𝗧𝗛𝗘 worth some Horde FC's time, or vice versa?
It's a bit like we switched places on this, you know, because I went all the way for ultimate loss, and you went for minor meaningless.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, I hope that those minor things don't prompt a team up, right? I hope that that's not what they prompt. But I would certainly hope that if somebody was deep in my space invading the shit out of me, that my buddies 7 days ago in Pandemic Horde would come rescue me. You know what I mean? Like, I would certainly hope so.
We'll certainly see, won't we? We'll certainly see.
I mean,
what it takes.
I don't think we will.
What it takes to see is for somebody to actually take the step of presenting that peril in the first place. So, you know, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking for this year. I'm looking for a return of regular, meaningful war rather than just fighting for the sake of fighting. Fighting for the sake of fighting is great, but this game is built to offer so much more, more meaning.
Who do you want to have those wars?
Yeah, maybe I would like to see Fraternity make a move on PanFam.
For what?
Or the other way around. Well, I mean, that's one of the questions here, isn't it? I mean, you need some form of
the question. Like, what would you?
You need.
What
well,
would
yeah,
I
you
fight
need
over?
some.
We both have
Well,
all the
exactly.
space we need.
Exactly. So, what you would need is some form of we don't have enough of this. Let's go and take theirs.
We'd all rather.
What
shoot
this
a
is,
goon.
who knows? Do we think that the game has something that there isn't enough of for everybody to have at the moment?
I don't
Fun?
think scarcity breeds conflict the way you think it does, CCP 𝗨𝗘𝗏𝗧𝗘𝗏. I really don't.
I think that I'm falling back into my classic ways here, but we've been through that 1,000 times. But I think you know my view on that. But yeah.
No, but like realistically though, I don't expect Frat to invade Horde or vice versa. I don't expect Init to invade Imperium or vice versa. But I do.
No, I
some
don't
sort of
either. But there should
proxy
be
thing.
there should be something. There should be an incentive to do so.
Well, the thing is what would it even be, right? Like
Something that you want that you otherwise don't have enough of.
like what?
Like what?
Yeah,
like
what?
Something that's sort of scarce.
So minerals, then.
Minerals. I mean, once upon a time, before the Citadel area, obviously it was things like technetium. You know, there was value in going and repeatedly having an actual territorial war over some of these things here. I don't think I very much don't feel that give everybody everything they want so that you can be a forever empire, not needing to invade your neighbors is particularly conducive to having territorial war in this game.
So what would say your alliance need to start a war? Like what kind of thing?
Well, again, it's something to fight over. Right now, you're absolutely right. For instance, my very small group, we fight for the sake of fighting. There are plenty of much larger groups that surround us, but they don't really have anything to fight over themselves.
So why can't
either.
Why can't the big groups just fight for the sake of fighting? Why is it something that's only?
Oh no, they can. I want more.
Okay,
no,
but
they can,
maybe
and they do.
Maybe they don't want to do all the structure bashing, you know, for basically nothing. Because, like you say, everything is available, and I think that's the way that it should be, so that you can go out and you can fight and you can have fun playing the game, or you can go and you can crab and you can have fun doing that if you want to, but you gotta watch out for whalers, because they should be out and about hunting and doing their thing.
The difference is,
And all that's fights.
I've very much experienced
But like you can't
this game when
say-
there is a scarcity of things that people
can't-
fight over.
You can't tell the big groups that they have to have big wars. And
Oh no, I
then
can't tell them that at all. But we could engineer the game to offer that.
It does offer that already.
Yeah, but it's not. But it doesn't offer a thing to fight over that you want to have.
I mean, 90% of the wars in this game have been over politics, and that's a psychology
Yeah.
thing. Just because half of the leaders of the coalitions in the video game are giant cowards doesn't mean that they're any less of EVE players than you, Mr. 𝗨𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗏𝗧𝗏.
No, it definitely doesn't. But it would be nice to have the option there. I do want to point out, Redline.
What? What do you want to point
I
out?
don't mean to. Didn't want to pull rank over you here. But
Okay.
is your Redline character your first character in EVE?
It is.
You were playing EVE 2 years after the Citadel era.
Okay.
So we would have to get somebody in who had experienced EVE Online before then. If you wanted to verify my claims that having things that were worth fighting over was good for the game, because I know that you don't have that experience.
I don't understand what you're trying to say to me. It sounds like you're throwing shade my way.
I'll tell you what I'm saying. I'm saying you had.
I had to be there. Well, that's the thing. I wasn't there, and will never be there again. So you have to play in the game as it exists today, instead of longing for how it was in the past.
See, I was there, and some of the problems are the same problems that we have now. When we had things to fight over, people realized the value of those things, and they just formed a cartel. So the cartel controlled the prices of things, and everybody profited, and everybody had big fat wallets. The things that people were fighting over were still the same things we're fighting over today, which is politics and personality conflict. But right now, there's no villain. There's no villain in the game. So nobody's forming half the universe to come and smash into the other half of the universe, because everybody's a well-balanced individual now. So
Yeah.
you don't have psychopaths somewhere, on a Twitch TV show telling people that they should go and harass another individual. So
In game,
of course.
Good. So why don't we have these personalities today?
Because we got rid of them. They were toxic and terrible, and everyone's afraid to try to pick a fight with anybody today.
Why is everybody afraid to pick a fight today?
Because there's no reason to win it. What do you mean?
Well, it'd be good if there was a reason to win it then.
Like, it's like I was saying, so 90% of the big EVE wars have come from politics, right? Somebody's got a grudge against somebody else. The last big one was that we all hated goons. I'm pretty sure we still all hate goons, right? I get it. We should go fight goons. But right now, we're having fights just to have fights. And that should also be perfectly fine.
But you won't see the structure grinding eviction fights that you've seen in years past, because there's no drive to do it, right? There's no drive. Like everyone has their empire, everyone has their sandcastle. Yeah, it's fun to kick over someone else's sandcastle, but the risk is that yours gets kicked over as well. So,
right,
risk aversion and a cooling of politics has turned us into a game where giant conflicts are not forecasted anytime soon.
Not optimal.
Right? No.
Well, it's not that they're
Not
not
optimal.
optimal. It's just that if you think about it, like if you put up a sandcastle somewhere, right? It's very easy for someone to come and kick it. And when I say sandcastle, I mean like a Fortizar. So you're going to see those kinds of things. You're going to see those in EVE Online forever.
But that's not the sandcastle that I'm talking about. I'm talking about like
bring
fountain.
a bulldozer onto my beach, right? Like
That's right.
Nobody's going to take a bulldozer to anybody else's beach and just destroy the whole thing.
Well, to be fair, I mean, whether you would bring a bulldozer or not depends on the size of the sandcastle. And B just mentioned basically a home region rather than a
That's what I
content
mean.
citadel.
The beach is the region, my friend.
Yeah.
The bulldozer is an entire alliance deployment to steamroll it, which is the last time that happened was in World War B2, right?
Like, you've got to remember as well that like the scale of infrastructure that is required to function as an alliance now is kind of like been feature creeping upwards for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And like if we take the example of Fountain, right? And if you said, well, even if Init just left Fountain and they just weren't going to fight over anything there and it was going to be entirely uncontested, like how long do you think it would take to go and grind through like 80 Fortizars and like, 10 Keep Stars and like over like 1,000 fucking Skyhooks and like all of the Astras, all of the Athanals, all of the moons, all of the Metanox moon drill. Like you're literally, if you bring like 1,000 people to go and do that, you're still talking about months and months of work to blow all that stuff up, even if it's uncontested.
And that is work as well, you're right. That is actual work because
the sheer amount of time to go through is fucking ridiculous now compared to what it used to be. Like the reason why wars moved quickly in the past was because they didn't get bogged down with having to spend like 3 weeks clearing the structures in one fucking system before they could move to the next one.
Do you think that we have too much stuff in terms of infrastructure now?
No.
I'm not asking you, Redline. I'm asking Calm.
It's it's more fun to fight over content structures than it is to defend and attack someone's like home infrastructure.
I think that the amount of stuff in space is probably fine, but it's too time consuming to kill the stuff that is there.
Well, what about
Skyhooks really needs a 20-minute fucking reinforced time. Do you have to have people shoot a Skyhook for 20 minutes to reinforce it? It's fucking stupid.
I mean that 20 minutes is alright.
Why not tie this stuff to some form of sovereignty then? So make it a fight over sovereignty and citadels, but everything else just blows up if Sov is ultimately lost. I mean, I know that's a very basic sort of rough overview of what I'm saying there, but I think you probably get what I'm guessing at.
I would be in favor of any mechanic that makes it easier to clear uncontested regions.
So maybe design it so that the fighting is over some of the key structures, and then if you do all the key stuff, everything else is essentially done for you, and you can move on.
I would like to create an environment where there are not uncontested regions. Why would the region be uncontested?
Okay. What would make people want to contest it?
That's a good question. It's a really good question.
Yeah. Maybe something that people want to have it for.
Does the new Equinox structures not make regions like contestable? Do you know what I mean?
They go some way towards making it easier to contest regions, but it's not really far enough in my opinion.
What is
like in order for them to work, you have to be there and maintain them, right? So there's no such thing as a floodplain anymore. Somebody lives in that space. Somebody has to manage the workforce, et cetera, right?
So, like, one of the primary reasons that it was very difficult to attack inhabited space in the past was because of the insane bonuses that ADMs give to the sovereignty timers, right? And it was very, very difficult to reduce the ADMs in an enemy system because it doesn't take them very much time to increase the ADM. And all you have to do is, like, kill a few rats, a couple of hours a day, and that's it. You're sorted. So Skyhooks were a good change, I think, in the sense that there's now something you can actively do to like take a step to reduce the ADM that is something which isn't cloaky camping the system 24 hours a day to make sure that 2 Vexes can't kill 50 rats in an hour. Because that it really is all it takes to maintain an ADM under the previous system. So, like, having a stepping stone where you can, like, have a structure you can attack that kind of, like, contributes towards reducing the ability to maintain the ADMs, I think is a good step to have. But the fact that it is just so difficult to kill them with a small group, and they don't really make any difference towards the ADM anyway, is kind of... It was a good idea, just like hasn't really been implemented like all the way through.
Well, indie game devs can't really implement things all the way through. They have to kind of do it on the fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But somebody in chat,
Working from their
Hoff,
sheds in the back garden.
Hoff said, "What if you could capture structures? Now that would be kind of sick. Instead of shooting it, get it to hull. You have a choice.
I mean, quite frankly,
die
why not?
Or capture.
I mean, why not? Why not just make it so that if you do everything to take Sov, you just get, all the skyhooks are just yours. I mean, sure, you can shoot them and blow them up still and put your own in that way, or just take Sov and all of the existing ones become yours, because that would cut down on the grind, and it would give you something for your Sov immediately.
But anyways, that's kind of not the point, I guess. The point is...
Would you extend that? Sorry, hold on.
Gone.
Would you extend that to citadels? Remember when you used to be able to lock people out of their stations?
When people used to dead zone stations.
Would be insane. In 2025 EVE Online to do something like that would be crazy. Everyone would
I know that a lot of people would expect me to want to go along with that, or say something like, oh, we should giga nerf citadels, or everything should drop when a citadel is exploded. But I do think that is one thing we're too deep into to be that drastic about. I do think that there should be, if you don't hold Sov, then you lose some citadel functionality. I mean, not like you can't fit your ships, or you can't tether, but maybe something like you can only tether for 60 seconds, and then you've got to dock and undock again to do it. I mean, it's a complicated subject because there's a whole host of tweaks that maybe in another episode I would love to talk about what I would want to do to citadels if I was the president of EVE Online, but that's a huge subject.
I think that idea around you talking about things that you would like to change in a game sounds like a great idea for a podcast.
Or perhaps a weekly live stream.
Yeah, true facts. Well, there was a question, or not a question, I guess, but a message that was highlighted, and I want to respect the highlighted message in the chat, because I think this is what you were looking for, and they're right on the money. I'm just going to read it. So, content structures generate fun fights, but they don't generate cultural cornerstone moments that a lot of people, I think, are thirsting for in this game. Would you say that is true? That you're looking for some more cornerstone moments, you're looking for some more history?
I mean, it'd be nice to have events that notably stand out forever afterwards. And one common theme about Asakai or about B-R is that these things had a side that had to take some harsh losses. We get these stories, we get these feelings, and we get these brutal beatdowns only when somebody has to lose, and they have to lose enough for it to stick in your mind. So EVE Online has always very famously been a game of actual consequences, and if we try and find a way to minimize the consequences so that they don't really matter anymore, then we're losing the soul of EVE, and we're losing the drive that pushes the game forwards. So there are victims along the way. Some people who lose a Titan aren't going to want to play again, but it has enriched the game and attracted more people and given monumentally more people than the storyline that they came here for.
So do you think that in some part this loss of consequence of people's action is because of the fact that people who are running these organizations in nullsec have become better at managing risk and managing their organization and making it so that you are not risking things which are unmanageable losses?
I think that the game has become designed in a way which presents these leaders with that being the optimal way to play the game. I do not blame these people for playing the game that is presented to them.
I would broadly agree with that.
And I mean, I think the thing is, though, is that these cultural moments, what you don't, when you read the articles or you watch the videos, what you don't see are what the people experiencing them go through, right? So those fights, and the one that sticks in my head was the first one for X47 back in like 2019 or something like that, 2018 maybe. There were so many fucked up things happening in that system that the game was broken for days in that system, right? There were so many people and so many different things happening. There were ghost faxes that were literally in the system for days. They couldn't figure out how to get rid of them. Like, the game barely worked, and that fight was 14 hours long, right? That's why
I mean,
so
what you're
many
describing is
people
what you're
got
describing is
deleted.
bugs rather than features. But yeah.
No. I'm describing the features of a cultural cornerstone fight in EVE Online. The features of those fights are that you commit 14 hours to it, you have thousands of people, thousands of ships, the game barely functions for 14 hours, and afterwards, it's busted to shit. That is what happens with the cultural cornerstone moments. So yes, you do get the articles, you get the videos that get tens of thousands of views, but the thing is that they suck. They absolutely suck. The server, the game cannot handle those kinds of fights, right? So like those existential threats, I don't think are going to exist anytime soon in the game, as long as you can make as long as content structures exist, because
It's always been like that,
there's so
though.
many battlefields to have a fight on, right? We're good, man. Just fight.
This is just such a non-point, right? Like, oh, like if you there's going to be no massive fights of consequence anymore because the servers can't handle it. It's a ridiculous argument. Like,
What do
go
you
and look at like
mean?
the dread fight in Head GP, right? Like the BTAC R5R fight, right? Like servers didn't work well in any of these fights. They completely
Okay,
broke down in
but
all
were they
of them,
broken
and then
as bad
and then
after?
we continue to have these fights, you know, years afterwards. Like
Right.
every time that we see one of these massive fights, it's like, oh my god, yeah, the servers break. Everyone knows it's going to happen, and then for you to say like, well, if we know that if we, you know, stress the servers that much, it's going to break, so therefore no one's ever going to do it again because no one's ever going to want to do this. Fucking insane! Like, are you like that's so naive.
Would it be better if I told you that I was really trying to get someone to start a giant fuck off war? And like you just poking
It's why you
holes?
need to start telling somebody that they're bad and that they would never do something, so that they feel like doing it.
Yeah, like saying that everyone's a coward and afraid of tie-dye. That's why they won't start big wars.
Also, Carmen,
That's the
Redline
only
brought
reason
you
this is
here to be on
happening.
his side, not mine.
I would like to think that I am on my own side. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Of course.
The side of first-hand knowledge and experience.
Whoa! I also have first-hand knowledge and experience. It is from like 7 years ago at this point, but that's like I was saying earlier. I was hanging out with a different crowd back then. But I think
Redline,
at the
I do mean
core-
it. There is plenty of game here for you. There is what
I
you're
know.
looking for. You just got to pick it up.
No,
You got to pick it
you
up.
don't get it. You don't get it. I would much rather just play EVE with my friends.
I think it is interesting what you were saying before, though, that these kind of cornerstone, you know, tentpole fights, like people have like wildly different experiences in them. And like I remember there was the guy from PC Gamer wrote an article a while ago about the M2 breakout fight that happened, and I was there for like all of the planning of that, and I remember the 2 or 3 people from Test that he had interviewed for this, like people I'd spoken to quite a lot over the years, and I remember reading through this article, and I was like, reading through like this other person who was just a line member in Test, like their experience of that fleet, and it was like completely different from like what I thought it would be. It was crazy to see like just how different the experiences can be for some people versus other people throughout like the same events in these like big cornerstone fights.
And of course, Cornerstone Fights is a very different thing to very different people. You know, Redline, for you, it's 6,000 people in a system. You know, for me, I've been in fights with 1,000 or 2,000 people. I've been in fights with 100 or 200 people. I've been in fights with 1v1 and you know, there are at all of those scales, there are fights that I'll never forget, and they're very important to me. And
Yeah, but
where
those aren't
fleet fights are
cornerstone
concerned,
cultural fights. Like when someone says cornerstone cultural fights, those are the fights that make it to the front page of, illustrious gamer
The $1 million fights.
news websites or whatever. Like those are the ones that I'm thinking this person is talking about.
No, the
Not the ones that mean
cornerstone
something to you.
scales. The cornerstone scales with the size of the group that you're fighting with. So if you have a small group and you have a 200-man versus 200-man fight, and that's your cornerstone. No one can tell you that that's not a cornerstone for your group, right? It doesn't have to be a BTAC-R moment. It doesn't have to be a whatever, an M2 moment. It can be
those are things that are now ingrained in the EVE culture, though. And that's
right, but my EVE culture is different from your EVE culture, which is different from Phantomite's EVE culture. Like the culture is the group that you have around you.
That's because
right?
Phantomite doesn't have culture.
The stories are still. Well, that's true. He's an uncultured swine, but the stories are the same from all these places, right? Like this is art imitating life. If you talk to old soldiers, they'll tell you the similar stories to what new soldiers will tell you. It's the same things. Right, we did this. It was fucked up. The weather was awful. We were hungry. We were tired. Blah blah blah. It's the same thing, right? You talk to EVE Online guys from small gang fights to large ones. Oh, the servers were fucked. This misclick happened. This other thing happened. This was bugged. It's the same thing. Small fights to big fights. The stories are the same. The scale just changes, right?
I mean, I suppose so. And as much as I say that those fights are miserable and awful and I hate them, I love to have them and to be in them. Like the times that I spent in X47, UALX, like all those giant fuck-off fights where I was FCing things were the most fun like I've had in big fights. But honestly, it's just about playing the game with your friends these days. And if your friends are the people in your alliance, as they should be, then you got to join the fleets and go have the fights, just to have them.
I mean, like anecdotally, I've done like a lot of big fleets in the last 5 or 6 years or so. I've been like Titan FC and Titan fights and stuff like that. And I would say that like the smaller fleets I've done like have given a lot more of like the lasting, impactful memories than the bigger ones. The bigger ones are a lot of like flowchart where you don't really have to make a lot of decisions. It's all just kind of like known game theory, and like you don't really have to make a decision because it's all like just the obvious thing to do or not. Whereas like the smaller scale fights and the smaller scale fleets I have found have generated a lot more emergent gameplay and interesting decisions and memorable moments, at least for me.
Well, you kind of have a budget sort of internally yourself as to how deep you can delve with your attention to the details of the fleet. On the large scale, you have to spend your budget of attention on the larger scale strategy, and when you are 1v1, you are looking at small numbers and you are tweaking things and you are doing a lot more manual piloting of your ship and transmatching and things like that. It's asking different things of you, and I think that's one of the most fantastic things about this game is that whether you're fighting anywhere from solo to with 2,999 of your closest friends, they are very different experiences, and you have levels of mastery that you have to learn for both of those and everything in between. And that's something that nothing else in the entire video gaming scene can give you.
It's certainly interesting for me that the theory around how fleet fights work, like given the same tools which are available, like the theory around how fleet sizes interact is like a 50v50 fight is completely different to like a 150v150 fight, and that is again completely different to like a 500v500 fight. And like without changing anything about the game, just the scale of amount of players that are involved, like the theory and the concepts and everything about how you have to approach that radically is different.
I think that what something that that we all might be able to agree on about Cornerstone is that there are very, very physically large fights, which is what outsiders see. And once those outsiders are drawn into the game from those very big fights, they get to experience their own cornerstones on all sorts of scales, from small to large.
I mean, I
think we got
guess
it.
so. I guess I'll give you that. I guess, but I think
Redline, I know that
I
you
think
have
the initial.
far more brilliant memories of playing Eve than just the fights.
Well, of course, but like but mostly it's the fighting. Like that's what is fun to me, right? It's just simply getting into a fight, but these days getting into a fight with like my friends on my side is what's more fun.
Yeah.
But
And,
like playing the game by myself, fuck that.
A lot of people like to make fun of the, and 10,000 of my closest friends type thing. But you do have, I do understand that in reality, you do have a connection and, a brotherhood with these people. It's like being proud of your country in real life. You don't know all several million people in your area. You don't know all 300 million people in your country with you, but you do have common ground, and you would stand side by side with them if the event called for it.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of that, I would say, but like I think I have a slightly more unique perspective than you guys on some of that stuff. Where if you're someone who's like a public figure within your group, like a lot of those personal relationships are a lot more one way than you would think. Like when I went to FanFest for the first time, I was in the airport and I had someone come over and talk to me in the airport because they recognized my voice because they had been on fleets for a bunch of years in test. And I was like, "Oh yeah, sweet. Like, who are you?" And they told me, and I was like, "I've got no fucking idea who you are." And it ends up being a really cool guy. We ended up hanging out with like in a FanFest for a few years afterwards. But it was very much one of those moments where it's like they definitely knew who I was, and I definitely did not know who they were.
Yeah, I mean that's just a sort of fact of life about talking to hundreds of people in one go, really, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah.
At sort of the size of the group that me and my guys are, then you do get the opportunity to a lot better know basically everybody.
Yeah, and it's
again, it's like these different scales of skills that you learn in running a fight, be it everywhere from 1 to 1,000. There's the personal relationships with people that changes as well.
Yeah, what you said. Well, hey, we're about at the end of the show for today. I know it's been like a month, a month and a half since we've streamed, something like that. But we're back now. So between now and next week, you all have homework. Are you ready? Do something in EVE Online this week worth talking about next week. How about that?
Well, in which case, next week I look forward to telling you about a brawl with close range guns, which I know to the rest of you is a very alien concept.
No, I like that shit.
Oh, good. Well, you should put an alt in my corp then.
An alt?
Literally use autocannons today.
What's an alt? I don't know what that is.
We're one account Andes, dude. You gotta get
That's
with
right.
the times. Well, anyways, are there any parting thoughts, parting words from anyone on the panel here, or am I just gonna see us out and try to find someone worth raiding?
I'll say
Nerf Antiblexes, thanks.
Why Nerf Antiblexes? Why is it always Nerf Antiblexes? I don't get it.
I usually pessimistic Phantomite. I have I can see the light. I can see the sun rising. I think that we're in for a good year.
I think so too. But what? I didn't get what? Whatever. Whatever. we're going to see you next week. Same place, same time. If you show up early, you'll get a bonus. If you don't show up at all, well, that's your problem. But we're going to raid this person named In Debt. And when you get there, I hope you send lots of like little purple hearts, I guess they are. I don't know what you're talking about with the sound levels either, but I'll definitely sort those out next week, I suppose. Until then, see you next time.